All right, welcome. This video is predicting that singer-songwriter Paul Simon will die on August 1st, 2025 at the age of 83, which is the reason for this prophetic sign that I'll explain that occurred yesterday, July 18th, that involved 800 earthquakes in 30 days. Now, the prediction that Paul Simon will die on August 1st has been known since November of 2024. I have only gotten around to documenting this, however, in the month of July. That said, this timestamp of this email, as we can see here, proves that this prediction is being made ahead of time, as does the post date of this video prove that this prediction is being made ahead of time. Now, the skeptic will say, I should say the radical, extremist, irrational skeptic will say that I must have made different videos for every day of the year and eventually I'm going to get lucky. But that's absurd for two reasons. One, only a crazy person would do such a thing. And the person that would believe that someone would do such a thing is the crazy person. And two, it is the reasoning that I'm providing. This reasoning is profound, clear, and is not possible to have been concocted in the imagination of a human being. No one is creative enough to come up with these countless reasons, even one of them, for how August 1st is known ahead of time. All right, and I'll be explaining one such reason here as to how August 1st is known ahead of time. The reason why Paul Simon will die on August 1st is because of his first hit, Sound of Silence. And in Revelation 8:1, which is what the date 8:1, August 1st, is pointing to, describes a period of silence that was observed in heaven before the 7 trumpet judgments. Paul Simon's most recent album is 7 Psalms. He's also known for his big hit, Late in the Evening, which heavily uses trumpets, for example. And so the 7 trumpets follow the period of silence that is observed in heaven. All right, that reasoning alone is enough to prove that this prediction is being made ahead of time. But that's just very basic. Now, this particular sign, let me just read what I wrote. It is interesting that this news story about 800 earthquakes in 30 days at Mt Rainier, which threatens 3.3 million people, was published 14 days before Simon's predicted death on August 1st, and 43 days before the predicted dirty bomb in New York City, where Simon is from, on the date 8/30, as in 800 earthquakes in 30 days. Okay, and so to begin with, after the period of silence is observed in heaven, what is observed is earthquakes. Earthquakes are observed in this passage in heaven. I should say an earthquake was observed after the period of silence. Now, Paul Simon is currently on tour in his Quiet Celebration Tour. The Quiet Celebration Tour is also a hint at the Sound of Silence and the period of silence that is observed in Revelation 8:1 that is followed by an earthquake. Paul Simon's tour will end in Seattle. Seattle will be the final city of Paul Simon's Quiet Celebration Tour. That's why this particular sign points to Paul Simon. This earthquake, these 800 earthquakes, are at Mt Rainier. Mt Rainier is observed from the skyline or from the city of Seattle. In fact, Mt Rainier is arguably part of the skyline of the city of Seattle. Seattle is, in other words, known for the backdrop of Mt Rainier. So when this article here talks about Mt Rainier being the most dangerous earthquake in the U.S. and it threatening 3.3 million people, the population it's referring to is the greater Seattle area. Okay, and so Paul Simon's tour is predicted to end in Seattle next to Mt Rainier. And he's predicted to die at the age of 83. And here we have these 800 earthquakes in 30 days with this article that was published on July 18th. It was published, by the way, in the Daily Mail. And then other sites republished the original article. Okay, now, again, the date of the published article is 14 days before his predicted death and also 43 days before the predicted bomb on the date 8/30. And Simon is predicted to die at the age of 83. And again, we're talking about 800 earthquakes in 30 days, as in August 30th, 8/30. Simon's death will be a Revelation chapter 8 sign, and he will die at the age of 83. 800 earthquakes in 30 days that threaten 3.3 million people hints at the age of Simon, 83, and the date 8/30. The reason why these 14 days and 43 days connections from this Mt Rainier earthquake's sign are interesting is that 43 is the 14th prime number. Okay? Again, the connections are 14 days to Simon's death and 43 days to the predicted bomb in New York City. And what's a coincidence is that 43 is the 14th prime number. And God uses prime numbers for his signs and connections. In his true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which is only being explained on this channel. Now, 14 is also the 5th semi-prime number. So 43 is broken down to 14, which is broken down to 5. But we also have the 14 days connection also. Okay, so 14 is the 5th semi-prime number, which is a number that is only divisible by 2 other prime numbers. And God uses semi-prime numbers as well for his signs and connections. And so it's the 5th semi-prime number. And Bridge Over Troubled Water was Simon and Garfunkel's 5th and last album. The name Paul Simon is equal to 500 in Hebrew gematria, and Paul Simon is Jewish. Simon's only number 1 hit as a solo artist was 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover. The prophetic reunion concert of Simon and Garfunkel attracted 500,000 people and was exactly 500 months before the release of the album 7 Psalms. Paul Simon will be in Seattle on August 1st, 8/1, for his Quiet Celebration tour. He is scheduled to perform 5 concerts in Seattle to end his tour. Now, by the way, one reason for the 5s here and the 5th album, Bridge Over Troubled Water, is that the metaphor of a bridge is what is described in the 5th trumpet in the book of Revelation, which is one of the 7 trumpets that follow the period of silence in heaven. In the 5th trumpet, the demons that are in the bottomless pit cross over the bridge into the earthly realm. So that's why the 5s here for Paul Simon. Now, Paul Simon also, by the way, sung about the Graceland Mansion, which sits on 14 acres, which is the 5th semi-prime number. And the Graceland Mansion is connected with the I-55 highway. And Paul Simon talks or sings about his drive down the I-55 highway to the Graceland Mansion. That's what the song is about. He's on his way to Graceland driving down the highway, which would be the I-55. So more fives. Again, it's all about the fifth trumpet and the bridge. Now, okay, and Paul Simon is scheduled to perform 5 concerts in Seattle. And one of the songs he'll be playing is Graceland, obviously, which is about traveling the I-55 to the mansion that sits on the 5th semi-prime number of acres. Okay, so he's scheduled to perform 5 concerts in Seattle. He's predicted to only play 1 concert before his death, which will leave 4 unperformed concerts, canceled concerts. This 1 concert and 4 concerts hints at the number 14. And this earthquake sign involving Seattle and Mt Rainier that points to Paul Simon is 14 days before his predicted death. And I'll just repeat myself. Paul Simon will be in Seattle at the time of his predicted death, having finished 1 concert and having left 4 to be canceled, which hints at 14. And it's 800 earthquakes in 30 days, which hints at his age that he will die at 83 in Seattle. And the earthquakes are basically Seattle, Mt Rainier. But another thing too is that God is using Paul Simon as a massive warning of judgment, which will culminate with his death. But this is explained in other videos. His music catalog even is filled with this big picture that God is explaining these different aspects of the big picture and the warnings of what is coming. So Paul Simon's death will bring it all together, and his death will be a massive, massive warning of judgment. Again, his death will point to Revelation chapter 8 and the 7 trumpets of judgment and destruction. That's why this sign here, this Mt Rainier sign, is a warning, because the point of the story is that this is not a good thing if Mt Rainier were to erupt. I think the scientists say that the eruption of Rainier is overdue. From what I recall, it's once every 1,000 years, and it's due. And if it were to happen, it would devastate the Seattle area. Okay, so in other words, these 800 earthquakes in 30 days is like a warning. It's like a wake up. It's like pay attention. It's like a warning. And that's the case with Paul Simon's predicted death at the age of 83 on the date 8/1, which will point to the 7 trumpets of judgment. And again, prior to the 7 trumpets of judgment and following the period of silence, there was an earthquake in heaven. See how this is all amazing and points to Paul Simon's death in Seattle. Just something that I remembered after, which I already said. Also, Simon sang Graceland. Simon's song, Graceland, is about the mansion that sits on the 14-acre property. And again, 14 is the number of days between the sign and Simon's predicted death, when he'll have performed 1 concert, leaving 4 to be canceled, which ends at 14. Okay? All right.